The storm lasted all through the night. Peppa and George were still trembling with fear from the sounds of the storm. But that day, the consequences were far worse than just lack of sleep. At breakfast, Grandpa Pig noticed that the children were in a bad mood because they hadn't slept well. So he suggested they all go play in the forest park. This idea cheered up Peppa and George. After a hearty breakfast, they all went to the park together. As soon as they arrived, Peppa and George eagerly ran inside. And soon, they met Miss Rabbit, who worked at the park. Miss Rabbit immediately began giving the little pigs directions and assured Grandpa Pig that they had received proper instructions and were ready to climb the big tree. Grandpa Pig decided to stay below and take pictures. George begged Miss Rabbit to take them as high as possible. Peppa hesitated a bit because she was afraid of climbing the big tree, but she decided to go with her brother anyway. When they reached the top, Peppa looked around and immediately felt panic because she hadn't expected it to be so high. While Peppa was still in a panic, Miss Rabbit was already taking action. She fastened Peppa's harness and quickly gave her a push. Peppa started to fall rapidly, screaming in fear, until she got stuck on a broken cable. Seeing the dense forest below made her fear even worse. Soon after, George started to slide down quickly, crashing into Peppa. Unfortunately, Miss Rabbit hadn't followed the safety rules and sent George down before Peppa had even reached the other side. The storm from last night had caused a lightning strike, damaging the cable. Now, Peppa and George could only wait quietly for rescue, but Peppa was too scared and began to swing back and forth, eventually snapping the cable. Making things worse, Peppa fell into a thicket of thorns, scratching herself all over, but Grandpa Pig managed to rescue her. George stayed conscious because he had grabbed a branch during his fall. At that point, things kept getting worse. Because of the storm damage, almost all the rescuers were busy. George couldn't hold on any longer and fell from the tree. Luckily, Grandpa Pig and Miss Rabbit had placed some boxes below to cushion George's fall, so he was only slightly injured. About an hour later, the ambulance finally arrived at the park, but Peppa had suffered serious internal injuries, and the trauma left a permanent mark in George's memory. Now, they didn't know if Peppa would ever wake up.